Hey guys. All right. So my name's Elan, and I design video games, professional storyteller. I was actually one of the original lead designers for the Xbox when that first came out. And I got to say that statement has never in my life earned me a transcendental breathing date with an international model. So, yes. Unfortunately, it just makes me really popular with pear-shaped 16-year-old boys, for whatever worth that is. All right. So, not that there's anything wrong with that. Thank you. Lately, I started a new company to explore the bounds of storytelling. We actually just closed our initial round in January, raised $15 million. I moved to LA. We are now starting to explore what it means to tell stories. And what I thought I would do today is kind of walk you through the process of storytelling and its evolution and how we kind of ended up where we are today, and hopefully inspire you guys to start tinkering around with what comes next. I love questions. Raise your hand, interrupt me, all of that's good. If you save your questions entirely until the end, someone ends up asking like, oh, what font did you use in the presentation? And you walk away with the only thing in your head is like, ooh, Arial bold, and that's it. So please, please, please interrupt me. It's all good. I really want this to be as interactive as possible, like all good storytelling. All right, so to take a quick step back, when we look at storytelling, there have only been 5 major steps forward in the evolution of storytelling. Right? We had campfires way back, Western theater, the printing press, the motion picture camera, and I'll bet you guys know what the big one is today. Us, the internet, all that excitement. What's really crazy about this, I'm going to go a little bit out of order, is when we look at these things, each one of these went through an insane exploratory phase of figuring itself out, figuring out how, campfires, thousands of years in the making as they figured out what the best ways are to tell stories. I did a TED Talk a while back on the different steps of that. I know we're running late, so I'm not going to bore you guys with all the steps there, but each one of these things, thousands of years to figure this out, hundreds of years to figure this one out. The printing press, 200-300 years before they could finally move past once upon a time and figure out just how to tell good stories. Motion picture camera, 120 years of figuring that out until we've gotten to this golden age of television today, for example. And when I was going to do this whole big crazy thing on this talk, but it's actually, I think, cool, because the way we can summarize this whole insane slide is we started out sucking at everything until we kind of figured out how it's done. The internet. We're like 20 years in. We still suck at this. We still don't know how to tell good stories on the internet. And really, if you get anything out of this talk today, it's that that's okay. It's really kind of awesome that we suck at this, because we're supposed to. Because it's up to us to figure out how to tell the best stories on the internet and what it means to tell stories on the internet, and to figure out how it is that the internet wants to tell stories. So here's what I'm going to do. I like to say that I'm really good at this because I have made more mistakes in this field than anyone else on the planet. I've done some crazy projects, and I'm going to walk you through some of them, and then we can kind of talk about why they didn't work, what was really interesting about them, what we can learn from them, and then how to move on to even cooler things moving forward and figure out what it is that the internet wants to do. So, we'll start with a company I did a few years ago. Decided to publish a book. And I was really frustrated with the way that the book publishing model kind of worked, because it was kind of like you buy a book and you're done. You take it home, there's no more interaction with the thing. So some friends and I created Kathy's book. And Kathy's book was, it was a diary of this young girl. She's like 17 years old. She's having this incredible experience, and she writes all about it in her diary. And as she goes through her story, which by the way was just beautifully illustrated, she's got doodles all along the sides, and as you read her story, the things in the story start to become real. There's a phone number right on the cover of the book that you can call and actually talk to her. She tells, this as an example, she tells this one story about, oh, I'm so pissed off at my boyfriend, that guy's such a jerk, I'm going to go home and I'm going to tear up his picture, I never want to speak to him again. You turn the page of the book and his actual torn up picture falls out of the book. You can then put that picture back together and get to see what Kathy's boyfriend looks like. Flip the picture over, written on the back is his phone number, which you can, of course, call. And now listen to his voicemail. If you're really clever, I'll bet you could figure out his password, and now listen to all of his incoming calls. On and on this experience goes, allowing the audience to actually participate in the fiction, to let them be a peer to Kathy and participate in her adventure that way. Now, here's something crazy that happened. In order to sell this idea that this woman is real, that this young girl is actually having these things, we had to give her a Facebook page, because what? How are you possibly going to sell the fact that this girl exists if she doesn't have a Facebook page? So we put up a Facebook page. In order to put up a Facebook page, you have to list a birth date. We made up a birthday for her, posted the page, and on her birthday, Kathy got a happy birthday note from a fan. And we thought, oh, that's actually kind of sweet. Although this is a fictional character. She doesn't have a real birthday, but holy crap, someone wished her happy birthday. And a few seconds later, of course, she got another one. And I'm sure you guys know where this is going. By the end of a 2-day stretch, the site was completely overrun with birthday greetings. This is nuts. Kathy doesn't have a birthday. She's a fictional character. She was never born. But players felt like they could relate to her. They felt like they could send her notes. They felt like she was one of them. And this is a new step forward, yeah.
Did they know she was fictional, that they were not playing?
Well, they went to Barnes & Noble to buy the book, right? And it's published by a book publisher. And so you got to assume that on some level they know she's fake. But you also got to assume that on some level they want her to be real. And that's really the key here. One of my favorite quotes about this is, no one ever writes to Luke Skywalker and says, hey dude, sorry about your hand, right? Like, it's a different way of engaging with fiction, and it's completely unheard of because fiction doesn't have to live within the confines of the book, of the previous version of what storytelling is. So we started to tinker around with that. This book did really well. It was an international bestseller, a New York Times bestseller. There's 2 sequels already out. The movie rights have been sold. We're in production. Like when it first came out, it was $18.99, somewhere around there. We didn't make a ton of money on that first one. But the second one's, economies of scale, and we actually got way, way better at it. But we knew we just wanted to get that first one out there to kind of pave the way. And we had a lot to prove to our publishing partner that this kind of thing would work. And I'm very happy to say that was a really successful experiment for us. Let me tell you about another example as we move forward here. You guys know the band 9 Inch Nails? Yes. Sure. Okay, so when I left Microsoft, I started a marketing company because I thought one of the ways that I'm going to get to fund a lot of these experiments in storytelling is marketing dollars. I mean, there's just tons of capital. It's this huge wall of money coming towards us, and whoever can hold out the biggest bucket wins. So I started this marketing company, and it was called 42 Entertainment. And what we did at 42 was basically help our partners find ways to translate the model from push to pull. Typical marketing is push, right? Like, get your message out there, scream from the mountaintops, inundate your audience with as much of this stuff as you possibly can. And we all know that the more you do that, the more invisible the message becomes, right? We're really good at tuning that stuff out. We're really good at closing our eyes to billboards, skipping commercials, ignoring all possible messaging. But if you can switch that model around and use storytelling to translate it into a pull model, give people just a little, and then encourage them to go out and pull all these pieces into their lives to seek out the next bit of content, suddenly you're engaging them on this new level, and you're starting to tinker with what it means to tell stories on the internet, what the internet wants to do, what it's really powerful at. So Trent Reznor came to us, and he basically said, look, I got this new album. It's called Year Zero, and I think it's going to be really cool, but it feels to me like the soundtrack to a world. and I've got the soundtrack, but I don't have the world. And we said, awesome, we will build you that world. And we did all kinds of really crazy things to tell the story of the album. It was this dystopian future 20 years from now. The government has way more control. There's no separation of church and state. Everyone's kind of this mindless citizen going with the flow. And you know when on the back of a CD it says, piracy protection, don't pirate this disc, it's illegal, blah, blah, blah. We didn't use that one. We used this one instead. This was one we made up. This crazy message, be a patriot, be an informer, spy on your neighbors, and a phone number, which you could actually call. And that would be this rabbit hole into this long series of websites where you'd learn about the world and all kinds of crazy things would happen. It got even weirder. At Nine Inch Nails concerts, we took these little thumb drives and we would stash them in bathrooms and under the stage and beneath the seats. And people would find these thumb drives, and there'd be unreleased Nine Inch Nails tracks on them. And I'm sure you guys have seen like a waveform of a sound on a computer, right? It's just crazy gibberish of a wave. When you started to listen to these tracks and look at them on a spectrograph on a computer, weird images would start to come out instead of your usual mishmash. And even sometimes some phone numbers, again, stuff you could call and start to interact. Got even weirder than that. The disc itself, this beautiful black disc, said year 0 at the bottom, nothing else. Take that disc, put it in your CD player, listen to the album. When you eject the disc, a different CD comes out of your CD player. The one that comes out is white with secret messages written all over the disk surface, URLs, all kinds of interesting things you can do. This was a thermal ink we developed. The heat from the CD player would eat away at the ink, so when it came out, you've got the revelation of the new disc. There's all kinds of fun ways that you can play with people, as long as you're willing to translate from push to pull. If you let people, if you give them just a little, they'll start poking at this thing like crazy. We saw amazing results from Nine Inch Nails. People, by the millions, started participating in this fiction. One of my favorite Nine Inch Nails stories, I could tell Nine Inch Nails stories forever, but one of my favorites was the site we put up called Open Source Resistance. And we really wanted to make this as interactive as possible. So what we did was we basically said, let's make a matchmaking site around this album. And what it's going to do is it's going to match people with a message with people with a network, any kind of network, and any kind of message. So, for example, we looked for people with really strong messages. Hey, let's say you're passionate about the infant mortality rate in China. Let's say you're passionate about pollution rates in the United States. Let's say you're passionate about the amount of times that we are surveilled on a daily basis using closed-circuit cameras. Create art, create audio, create video, create whatever it is that you can best express that message and upload it to the site, Open Source Resistance. Then, the matchmaking part is, if you've got a network, we want you to. If you have a blog, if you run a school newspaper, if you run a nationally syndicated newspaper, if you're the producer on a major television network, we want you. And we got them. And what would happen is we'd match people up. I'm going to show you, these are just some of the art. It's hard for me to show the video and audio, but these are things that went out in the New York Times, in the LA Times, on little high school blogs. These are things created by users, things that they were really passionate about that we actually put out there. We had a ton of stuff show up at like 3 a.m. on NBC. We had just these really, really beautiful, very thought-provoking, really interesting messages. One of the things that I think is awesome, this symbol right here, this was our flag for our resistance movement. This was like the banner that people were waving to kind of say, in the fictional world, stop what the government is doing. Remember that flag. It's going to come up again in another second as we look through a few more of these. Ultimately, what this led to was pretty insane stuff like this. We saw a number of these. Tattoos, real tattoos. Like, let me say this in a different way. Permanent corporeal disfiguration for this fiction, right? People got so passionate about this, so excited about the idea of finding community, of participating in the storytelling environment, that they thought, yeah, hell, let's permanently brand ourselves with this open source resistance movement. I'll tell you one other really fun story about Nine Inch Nails, because it was really one of the milestones in my career of figuring out how you tell stories on this massive level. One of the first projects I worked on was for Steven Spielberg for his movie AI. And we had this really fascinating problem. The Spielberg project was this series of websites and emails. It was a murder mystery that people were participating in simply by living their lives, right? They would go from website to website and they learned about the guy who was killed in a mysterious boating accident, and they needed to figure out who done it, and they called the phone numbers and they showed up at these live events. And ultimately, what it led to was we wanted to do these crazy live action role-playing events in New York, Chicago, and LA. Actors were going to show up, the players were going to show up, there was going to be a corpse, they were going to have to figure out what the hell was going on. Ultimately, they'd go out of there with the clue they needed to get to the next thing. Here's what actually happened. LA and New York, perfect. In Chicago, they were a little slow, and they didn't figure out the clues in time. But the actor knew, hey, 9 p.m. I'm done. So 9 p.m. rolls around, the players still haven't figured the thing out. The actor does exactly what he's supposed to do. He picks up the fake body, throws it over his shoulder, and walks out the door. And the players are like, what the hell is going on? And they follow him. And they follow him down the street, and this poor guy was like, you know, he takes 10 steps and he looks over his shoulders and there's 25 kids following him, and he takes another 10 steps and he turns to them and he says, guys, we're done. No more, the game's over. And they're like, awesome! And they keep following him. And so he gets onto the subway and they all follow him onto the subway, and he gets to his house and they all follow him to his house, and he goes inside and he calls the police. And the police show up. And the police start arresting the players, and the players are like, this is the coolest game ever! Eventually they figured it out, but there's this problem when you start to, and when I say we're in this wild experimentation phase, this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Who the hell knows where the boundaries are? Who the hell knows where the rules are? We kind of define them as we go. This was clearly a mistake. Yeah?
It does help to have a personality or an individual that has that pull.
For sure, yeah. That draw and that pull is.
That magnetic energy.
Yeah, and that's one of the key learnings along the way. Is finding that right voice. Maybe you need more than one person sometimes, and maybe you need, you know, the right balance of shouting versus whispering. And all of these are really, really important lessons that I've learned that you can only figure out by trial and error, right? Yeah?
What was the most interesting thing you found about, well, Trent Reznor happens to be a cult-type figure. He's outside of the mainstream. What kind of a pull factor did you experience, and how long did that show?
So what kind of a pull factor is brought on by those big name celebrities? I found that there's this inverse relationship. You can run a campaign really hot and really fast if you have one of those big names. Spielberg did it for us. Trent Reznor did it for us. We did this huge thing around The Dark Knight, and that certainly did it for us. And you can burn really bright if you do that. The other alternative is to jettison all that, and I'll talk through some of those as well. And you can get the same numbers, in some cases even bigger numbers, but you gotta be willing to burn a lot longer. And so it just depends on what the needs of how much money you've got, how much runway you've got, and what the needs of the actual project are. The 9 Inch Nails thing, one of the funniest things about working with Trent Reznor was I told him this AI story, right? And what we were going to do was run a secret concert. We were going to invite all the fans. A bunch of them got these secret phones that they had for months. They didn't know how they got these cell phones. One day they all started ringing, all at once. And it told them to show up at a parking lot. And the plan was, we were going to blindfold these guys, throw them in a bus with blacked out windows, drive them around in circles for about 20 minutes, take them to an abandoned warehouse, spit out a bunch of propaganda to them about this crazy dystopian world and how they have to unite and revolt, and then do a secret 9 Inch Nails concert. And I knew we were going to run into the same exact problem. How the hell do you know when this thing is over? How are we going to get it so they don't follow Trent home? And so my original idea was, let's set the building on fire. Seems like a pretty clear, yeah. You're there anyway, right? You might as well finish it off. And I travel everywhere. Every time I do any kind of pitch, I travel with my producer because I say stupid shit like that all the time, and she kicks me under the table. And she did. She kicked me under the table this time as well, and it was hilarious because Trent said, he's like, you know, a bunch of guys on my crew have criminal records, so we could just set the building on fire, and one of them would go to prison, and that'd be fine. They wouldn't mind at all. But we didn't do that. Instead, what we did was also kind of hilarious. Halfway through the concert, one of the walls exploded, and a SWAT team came in, firing automatic weapons, throwing concussion grenades, screaming at the top of their lungs. They were blocking off the most obvious exit, so now the only way out is from the entrance, the way that everyone came in, where we had the bus waiting. And the plan was, everyone's going to get really scared, funnel through this one door, get on the bus, go back to where they started, and now we know it's over. And what happened is almost exactly what I'm sure you're thinking was going to happen, which is disaster. A few of the players did exactly what we thought they were going to do. The SWAT team comes in, they're shooting their weapons, they're throwing the grenades, and these two huge guys, actually three huge guys, just sit there like this. What are you going to do, right? And so one of the SWAT guys grabbed one of them, punched him in the face, blood splattered all over the wall, threw him down on the floor, and started kicking the shit out of him. The other two guys turned completely white and run out the door. The guy was a stunt man. He was a plant. We had him on the bus from the beginning. There was a squib in his cheek. It exploded at the right time. It was the only way we could figure out to solve the follow the actor home problem, which was to scare the hell out of people. This is not the right answer. Definitely not the right answer, but it's an answer. And the reason I bring up this story, the reason I think it's so entertaining, is because, again, it illustrates this wild experimentation phase. And now that I've gone on that crazy tangent, let me get back to the deck. Yeah.
How do you insure something like that?
You cannot insure anything like that ever. You have plan B and plan C and plan D, and you just hope that one of those will catch.
You hope not one of the invitees is an attorney.
You hope what? Sorry?
One of the invitees is not an attorney.
Yeah. We, for I Love Bees, this project, I'll get to that attorney thing in 1 second here. I Love Bees, another fascinating experiment. So when I was at Microsoft, I designed a video game called Halo. And when I left, they called me up and said, hey, we've got Halo 2 coming out, and we'd really love some help promoting it. We want it to be the biggest, craziest thing ever. And the response was, of course, you don't need help. It's going to be the biggest, craziest thing ever. The first one sold like crazy. I mean, there's no issue here. And they said, yeah, but we want it to be a cultural phenomenon. And I scratched my head for a second and thought, all right, cultural phenomenon, stories about aliens invading the Earth. This has been done. This is Orson Welles. This is War of the Worlds, right? The radio spoof where he fooled the entire country into thinking aliens were invading and scared the hell out of everyone. Cultural phenomenon. So I thought, let's just do that. So we recorded a 6-hour radio drama. Wrote, recorded, directed, went all out about people living in this time the moment these aliens are coming down and attacking. And then instead of broadcasting it over the radio, we decided to try something else. We broadcast it over payphones. Tens of thousands of ringing payphones all over the United States, all over the world. You're walking down the street, you hear a payphone ringing, you pick it up, and it's this girl saying, oh, thank God you answered the phone. Listen, I need your help. They're about to bust down my door. Remember this message. And the story was delivered this way. It was really fun. We had all over the world, people gathered around these payphones. They turned into these crazy social events. The people would invite their friends. They would dress up in insane costumes. They knew these phones were going to ring. It was this wildly exciting thing. I got 2 wedding invitations from people who met answering randomly ringing payphones. And it was for me, this really, really wonderful moment. I Love Bees is one of my fondest memories because it was the first time that I think we really did it the right way. We really kind of nailed it. We told a story and we made it entirely participatory. People were actually leaving their homes to do this. They were everything that happened on a payphone. We would record their interactions. We would post those interactions back on the website, so the larger community, who was never going to leave their houses, got to hear what was going on. They got to turn members of their own community into stars as we wove them into the story. Because keep in mind, this is a story we're writing in real time, so you can participate with the audience that way. And it was this really, really wonderful moment. Yeah.
Did all of the payphones deliver the same message?
Sort of. So what would happen is we'd have every week, it was episodic. Every week we'd have a chapter. And the chapter was, let's say, 20 minutes long. We'd cut that up into little 1-minute chunks. So now we have 20 messages to deliver. And we would blast each message out to about, I don't know, 600 or 700 payphones, because we needed to ensure that at least one of them got answered. And then of those, some of them would be live calls where they could actually interact with the actors.
You didn't precede it. They literally had to be walking past and leaving payphone.
Oh, sorry. On the site, every week we had a list of the GPS coordinates of every single payphone, which, let me tell you, is the biggest pain in the ass to compile. We actually had to hire about 10,000 college students and buy them plane tickets all over the world to hunt down these payphones, make sure they were still working.
It's Microsoft.
10,000. It's Microsoft, yes. Yeah, it was a royal pain. There's all these databases of payphones around the world, and they're all inaccurate. You can't use any of them. You actually have to verify that the phone has not been torn out. I believe that this was the last time in history a payphone stunt can be done, because they're like extinct now. One of my favorite stories about this was there was this phone that we called every single week. We wanted this phone to ring. There was this one in Texas. There was very low player participation there. Every other state was really well represented. Texas, Houston in particular. And we called this one phone every week. You got to imagine, we've got 10 designers all conferenced in, muted. We've got 3 actors all muted. We've got the production designer. We've got the technical advisor. Everyone's on this crazy conference call every week waiting for someone to answer this phone, and it never happens. The last week of the thing, we're like, it's going to be at this time. Someone's going to answer this phone. And it rang and rang and rang, and someone picked it up. And it was this woman, and she said, "Hello, Wendy's, can I help you?" And we're like, shit, that's why no one's ever answered this. It's like in the lobby of a Wendy's. And this poor girl has finally, after every week this thing ringing, she finally came over and answered the damn phone to figure out what it is. And our actor, without missing a beat, she used to love to scare the hell out of players. And so this poor Wendy's employee answers the phone, and our actor said, "Soldier, who is the enemy of all mankind?" And I'm like, oh shit, I can't believe she just said that. And it was total silence for like 10 seconds. And then this poor woman on the other end goes, Burger King? Anyway, so yeah, I love these. So one of the next experiments we tried to run was, all right, what happens if you try to tell stories in a scavenger hunt type setting? What happens if we take a story, cut it up into little pieces, and just blast them all over the world? You guys been to Las Vegas, Bellagio Hotel, giant fountains out front? We thought, you know what's going to be cool? What if we kick it off there? And we actually built this specialized rig to hijack the fountains in front of the Bellagio and use them as a giant water screen on which to project holography. I'll show you. We've got a little quick thing here.
My name is Loki. My job is to find the smartest people on the planet.
So this was really fun. This thing went all over the world. We did building projections, clues all over famous landmarks all over the planet. We put clues in skywriting. We developed this tech to do dot matrix printing in the sky. We had this massive fireworks show in Seattle where every one of those explosions, based on their color, orientation, and timing, was a clue to this puzzle. It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. It was nearly impossible to solve. But yeah.
When you're doing something that expensive, though, how do you guarantee that the right people are there that know? Isn't there going to be like...
Oh, yeah. No, how do we make sure people know? Like, the fountain show was right in the middle of CES. Thank you. Yeah. So there were like 100,000 people out there. It was nuts.
That already know about...
Yeah. And Bill Gates did the keynote at CES that year, and we just fed him lines, right? So he announced it for us.
You must hate the word, we have a budget for this. You
Yeah.
don't hear the word
Never. I hate the word budget. Yeah. Although I gotta say, everything I've ever worked on, when we're done, the next project that comes along, they always increase the budget, which is a nice trend, right? So this one was really hard. We decided to turn it into a race to see who could get to the end the fastest, who could collect all the story bits. This girl here won, so we flew her into space, which was kind of a fun prize. All right, EDOC. This is, I decided to start a clothing company a few years ago to see how that would go, because I thought storytelling through clothing is also a really fascinating concept, and let's see how that could possibly work. EDOC, here's the secret. It's just the word code spelled backwards. We're so clever, right? It was first and foremost a clothing company. We tried to make really cool shirts, really interesting designs, kind of a street skater punk kind of mentality, stuff that we'd all be proud to wear out in public. But here's the thing. Every shirt in the line had somewhere in it a secret code or hidden message. We embedded stuff in the stitching. We embedded stuff in the way you could fold a shirt. We used infrared inks, glow-in-the-dark ink. Sometimes you need to get one shirt close to another shirt based on some tech that we'd bake into the fabric. All kinds of really cool things. And when you could extract the correct code from a shirt, you would take it to the website, and a movie would start playing. We made a ton of movies. We made one movie for every single shirt. We'll play some audio here. You'd start to learn this story as you piece together these shirts. And it was a story about a band, and one of them was killed, and it was this woman, and she's on the run from the law, and it's a crime she didn't commit, and only you can save her, and why the hell is she talking to me through these shirts, and it's the only method she has. It's a murder mystery, right? Before you know it, you're knee-deep in this murder mystery, and you want to know what happens next. It works just like a TV show. Right? Every episode is a shirt, and you piece them together, and if you want to know what happens next, awesome, buy another shirt. And so round and round this went. It was a really fascinating experiment. We eventually sold this company to The Gap. They're releasing the next season of it. But the reason that we did this was because of this guy. Doesn't matter how you feel about him, positive, negative, it doesn't matter. When he finished his second term, I was part of this really fascinating demographic. These younger, kind of mid-20s people who really had strong feelings about this guy. Really intense, strong feelings, and then didn't vote.
Did you love him?
I did not love him, I gotta say. But that doesn't matter. The point is, I went out and voted, and none of my friends did, and it was infuriating. And so what I did was I started a clothing company, because that's what you do when you're mad about something. And the thing that happened in this clothing company, the whole point of this company, was people would start to explore these characters, and they would learn about this band. Jeff played lead guitar. Jeff was not a real person. Jeff was a representation of someone else. Same thing with Adam on bass. Lynn, the producer. George, the manager. Who was Jeff? Jeff was really Thomas Jefferson. The story of this band, as we go along here, was really the story of the Founding Fathers. It was this group that had come together with a really strong message. They had this evil, oppressive management group, King George Records, and they had to, and it was very important to them that they get this message out. Someone got killed, which is really just the story of Alexander Hamilton. But what was really cool about this whole process was people my age were starting to go out there and uncover this hidden story. We never said it overtly. But before I knew it, our own fans started to form voting parties, and they started to volunteer for Rock the Vote and Get Out the Vote. And by the time the next election came out, for my demographic, there was absolutely record turnout, and I like to take 100% full credit for that. So let me talk about today, and I know we're kind of gonna keep moving faster. So to keep so today, this studio, look, last thing I want this to do is to turn into a company sales pitch. So I'm going to really barely talk about this.
How much money do you?
None.
Okay. Tell us.
None.
How much money you want to get?
I got to say, we're a very fortunate space. In January, we closed around for $15 million. We just got access to a $200 million production fund. We've got, we're hiring. If anyone knows awesome storytellers, awesome designers, please come talk to me. But the whole point of Fourth Wall is now to take the next step. Okay, we've gone through all this insane experimentation. We've tried some of the wackiest, craziest shit out there. I have a much higher tolerance for failure than basically any network, any studio out there. And the point of Fourth Wall now is to take that next step. So what we're doing is we've developed this absolutely insanely robust synchronization manager. And what it does is it basically keeps track of, all right, you're watching a show, you're watching a movie, you've got a computer on, hey, you've also got this cell phone in your pocket, you've also got a tablet, maybe you've got a laptop. It knows about all those screens, and it synchronizes them together. At its simplest form, all that means is you're watching TV, there's a character on the screen, he picks up the phone to make a phone call, the next moment, the cell phone in your pocket's going to start ringing, because that character can call you, or send you a text message, or an email. Okay, maybe that's interesting, maybe it's not, maybe it seems intrusive. All of this stuff is opt-in and out. It gets much cooler when characters are able to now walk off of one screen and onto another in real time. It gets even more interesting when you want to actually use these multiple screens as part of the storytelling environment. So there's two characters on the screen, two people engaged in a romantic relationship. There's the guy, there's the girl, they're fighting on screen. You want to know what the guy's thinking? Well, what if that was streaming in real time through your phone? So now you're listening to his inner thoughts. What if you wanted to know what was happening in the next room? Well, that's happening in real time on this other screen. Our attention spans as a modern day audience are really scattered, right? 83% of all television viewers do so while having another device in their hand, a smartphone, a tablet, what have you. So what we're trying to do now, what I believe very passionately the next step is to get this town to stop running away so scared from technology and losing their audience and start embracing it as part of the storytelling mechanism. So that's Fourth Wall Studios. This is the final thing. I thought it would be really fun to kind of end with my favorite video on the entire internet. Do you know what this is? Yes. Awesome. All right. So to me, this describes my career. There is this festival up in... Oh, I need a little bit of build-up. Come on. There's this festival in Seattle called Sasquatch, and this kid, what you're going to see is him dancing. Hey, you know what? Fine. Let's just show it. So, here we go. Here's this crazy naked dancer kid doing his thing completely alone, acting like a complete idiot. Everyone's ignoring him. He's got this like vision of what he wants things to be. He would love for more people to be involved, but it's just him. Until someone pays a little attention and starts playing around with him. So now he's got one friend, and look how happy this dude is. I love this. So now we've got the crazy naked dancer guy dancing around with one friend. Everything's going well, and they're having a grand old time. And what's really important about this is not giving up, right? Not getting any attention at all, but not giving up, because this is his passion, and he really likes this. And then, of course, before you know it, he gets another friend, and now there's 3 dudes. Still as crazy as ever, but starting to gain a little bit of traction. And then, did I say there's only 3 of them? Instead what starts to happen is there's 4, and then 5, and then 7, and then 9. And the reason I love this video so much is the first 5, 6, 7 years of my career was just this kid, you know, just dancing out there, completely alone. And no one believed in it, no one thought it was going anywhere. Hollywood is king, revenue is king, all of that stuff just works. And the trick is to keep with it. And no matter what happens, to stick with something that you know is going to be big. And this just keeps going and going